A man discovered he had been manipulated for years by those closest to him. When he decided to take a radical step, tears of relief streamed from his eyes. Painful truths came to light, and his life was transformed forever in a way no one could have imagined. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and comment where you're watching from. There's something unsettling about watching someone you know get taken advantage of, isn't there? You see it in their eyes, that moment when they realize they've been played, manipulated, or simply dismissed. But what if I told you that every single time this happens, there were warning signs? What if every moment of disrespect, every instance of deception, every time someone treated you as less than you are, could have been prevented? You've felt it before. That sinking feeling when someone cuts in front of you in line and you say nothing. The frustration when a colleague takes credit for your work while you stand silently by. The anger that builds when friends consistently cancel plans last minute, knowing you'll just accept it with a forced smile. These aren't isolated incidents. They're symptoms of something deeper, something most people never learn to address. The foundation of being respected isn't built on being louder, more aggressive, or more intimidating. It's not about becoming someone you're not or adopting a facade of toughness. The foundation of respect is built on something far more powerful and sustainable: the unshakable knowledge of your own worth, combined with the unwavering commitment to protect and honor that worth in every interaction. Think about the people you genuinely respect. Not those you fear, not those who demand respect through force or position, but those you truly respect. What is it about them? There's something in their presence, isn't there? A quality that makes others naturally pay attention when they speak. A way they carry themselves that suggests they know something the rest of us are still learning. They seem to navigate the world with a different set of rules that somehow protect them from the manipulations and disrespect that plague others. You might think these people were born different, blessed with some innate confidence or natural authority, but here's what you need to understand. What you're seeing isn't a gift, it's a skill. It's a learnable, developable, masterable skill that anyone can acquire. The difference is that these people learned early, often through necessity, to establish and maintain boundaries that serve as invisible shields against those who would seek to diminish, manipulate, or disrespect them. Your relationship with respect begins with a fundamental question that most people never ask themselves. What am I willing to accept, and what am I absolutely not willing to tolerate? This isn't about creating a list of demands or becoming difficult to be around. It's about developing such a clear understanding of your own value that you naturally, almost effortlessly, repel those who would seek to diminish you while attracting those who recognize and honor your worth. When you walk into a room, people can sense things about you within seconds. They can sense uncertainty, neediness, desperation, but they can also sense confidence, self-respect, and quiet strength. This isn't mystical. It's observable human behavior. Your posture, your eye contact, the way you speak, how quickly you respond to others, whether you seek approval or give it freely, all of these communicate volumes about how you see yourself and consequently how others should see you. Consider this. Every person who has ever taken advantage of you, disrespected you, or deceived you made a calculation. They sized you up and determined that you were someone who would accept their behavior. They didn't see you as someone who would push back, set boundaries, or demand better treatment. This calculation happens in microseconds, often subconsciously, but it happens every single time. The tragic part is that most people spend their entire lives unknowingly advertising their availability for mistreatment. They do this through 1,000 small signals, apologizing when they haven't done anything wrong, laughing at jokes that aren't funny to avoid awkwardness, saying yes when they mean no, accepting blame for things that aren't their fault, tolerating interruptions, allowing others to speak over them, or constantly seeking validation from those around them. But what if you could change these signals? What if you could learn to communicate something entirely different? That you are someone who expects and receives respect, someone who cannot be easily manipulated or deceived, someone whose time and energy are valuable and not to be wasted. What if you could develop such a strong internal compass that you automatically recognize and reject attempts at manipulation before they take hold? The path to earning respect and avoiding deception isn't about becoming harder or more cynical. It's about becoming more aware of your own patterns, aware of others' motivations, aware of the subtle games people play, and aware of your own power to choose how you respond to every situation. When you truly understand that respect is not something you earn through performance or people-pleasing, but something you claim through self-respect, everything changes. You see, the people who consistently receive respect have learned a secret that eludes most. They've learned to respect themselves so completely that disrespect becomes impossible to ignore and manipulation becomes easy to spot. They've developed such a strong sense of their own worth that they don't need external validation to feel valuable, which ironically makes others value them more. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but it can begin immediately. It starts with a shift in perspective, from seeing yourself as someone who must earn respect through compliance and accommodation, to seeing yourself as someone who naturally commands respect through self-possession and clarity. It's the difference between asking permission to exist fully in your own life and simply taking up the space you're entitled to. Every master of respect started exactly where you are now. They faced the same challenges, the same manipulative people, the same situations where they felt powerless or taken advantage of. The difference is that they decided to learn a different way of being in the world. They developed the ability to see through deception, to set boundaries without apology, to command attention without demanding it, and to navigate social dynamics from a position of strength rather than weakness. The question isn't whether you're capable of this transformation. You absolutely are. The question is whether you're ready to stop accepting less than you deserve and start claiming the respect that should be yours by right. Are you ready to stop being the person others see as an easy target and start being the person others naturally treat with consideration and regard? Imagine a version of yourself that moves through the world with such quiet confidence that manipulation attempts simply bounce off you. Imagine being able to spot deception the moment it begins, not through paranoia or suspicion, but through a finely tuned awareness of human nature and your own worth. Imagine commanding respect, not through force or aggression, but through the unmistakable presence of someone who knows their value and won't compromise it for anyone or anything. Imagine walking into any room, any situation, any relationship, with the unshakable knowledge that you deserve to be treated well, and the skills to ensure that you are. What would your life look like if you never again had to tolerate disrespect, never again fell victim to manipulation, never again found yourself giving away your power to those who don't deserve it? What would change in your relationships, your career, your daily interactions? If people instinctively knew that you were someone to be taken seriously, someone whose boundaries were non-negotiable, someone whose time and attention were valuable commodities not to be wasted. The journey to commanding respect and avoiding deception begins with understanding that every interaction is a negotiation. Every relationship is an ongoing conversation about value and boundaries, and every day presents opportunities to either reinforce your worth or undermine it. Those who master this understand that respect isn't something you get, it's something you are. Look around you. Really look. Watch how people move through their daily lives, how they interact, how they respond when challenged or pressured. What you'll see is a world full of people who have been systematically trained to surrender their power, to accept whatever treatment comes their way, and to smile while being slowly diminished. They've learned to say, "It's okay," when it's not okay. They've mastered the art of nervous laughter when faced with disrespect. They've perfected the skill of making excuses for others' bad behavior while holding themselves to impossible standards. They've become experts at convincing themselves that standing up for themselves isn't worth the conflict, that keeping the peace is more important than keeping their dignity. You see it everywhere, the employee who works unpaid overtime because they're afraid to seem difficult. The friend who always picks up the check because they've been convinced that's what friendship looks like. The parent who apologizes to their child's teacher for their child's behavior before even understanding what happened. The person who laughs off insults as just jokes while feeling wounded inside. The individual who accepts being interrupted constantly because they don't want to seem rude by speaking up. This is what happens when people choose the path of least resistance in every situation. They become easy targets, predictable victims, reliable sources of free energy and resources for those who have learned to take advantage of others' reluctance to assert themselves. They live in a constant state of low-level frustration, always wondering why they don't get the respect they crave, never understanding that respect is something you must claim, not something that's freely given. The most tragic part isn't that these people are unhappy, though many are. The most tragic part is that they've convinced themselves this is noble. They wear their inability to set boundaries like a badge of honor. They pride themselves on being easygoing and flexible and understanding, never realizing that what they're actually advertising is their availability for exploitation. Watch what happens when someone with this mindset encounters a manipulator, a narcissist, or simply someone who's learned to take what they want from others. It's like watching a master predator identify the weakest member of the herd. The signals are unmistakable. The quick agreement to unreasonable requests, the nervous energy, the desperate need to be liked, the immediate assumption of blame when things go wrong, the willingness to sacrifice their own needs for others' wants. Let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah was the kind of person everyone said they loved having around. She was always available, always accommodating, always willing to help. When her colleagues needed someone to cover their shifts, Sarah was there. When friends needed favors, Sarah said yes. When family members needed financial help, Sarah opened her wallet. She believed that being a good person meant putting everyone else's needs before her own. Sarah worked in marketing for a mid-sized company. She was talented, creative, and hard-working, but she had one fatal flaw. She couldn't say no. When her manager, David, first started asking her to take on extra projects without additional compensation, she agreed because she wanted to be seen as a team player. When he began taking credit for her ideas in meetings, she stayed silent because she didn't want to cause trouble. When he started delegating his own responsibilities to her, while he left early for golf games, she accepted it because she convinced herself it was temporary. But it wasn't temporary. It never is. David quickly learned that Sarah was a reliable source of free labor and creative ideas. He discovered that she would accept blame for his mistakes and take on his workload without complaint. Over time, he became increasingly bold in his exploitation. He would promise her promotions that never materialized, give her impossible deadlines to make himself look good to his superiors, and publicly criticize her work while privately using her ideas. Sarah's life became a cycle of exhaustion and resentment. She worked longer hours for no additional pay. She took on more responsibility while receiving no recognition. She found herself lying awake at night, angry and frustrated, but convinced that speaking up would only make things worse. She told herself that this was just the way the working world operated, that everyone had to pay their dues, that standing up for herself would mark her as a troublemaker. The breaking point came during the company's biggest campaign of the year. Sarah had developed the entire concept, created the visuals, written the copy, and managed the execution. The campaign was a massive success, bringing in record revenue for the company. At the celebration dinner, David stood up and took full credit for the campaign's success. He spoke about his vision and leadership, while Sarah sat at the back of the room, invisible and unacknowledged. That night, Sarah finally understood what her years of accommodation had cost her. She hadn't been building goodwill or establishing herself as valuable. She had been training everyone around her to see her as someone whose contributions didn't matter, whose time wasn't valuable, whose feelings could be ignored without consequence. She had become invisible in her own life, but the damage went beyond her career. Her personal relationships had followed the same pattern. Friends called her only when they needed something. Family members expected her to handle every crisis while offering nothing in return. Romantic relationships consistently involved partners who saw her as convenient rather than valuable. She had spent so many years saying yes to everything that she had forgotten how to say no to anything. Sarah's story isn't unique. It's the story of millions of people who mistake accommodation for kindness, who confuse boundary setting with selfishness, who believe that their worth is determined by their usefulness to others. These people live in a state of chronic frustration, always wondering why they feel taken advantage of, never understanding that they've been actively participating in their own diminishment. The pattern is always the same. It starts with small compromises, staying late when asked, lending money to friends who don't pay it back, accepting interruptions and disrespect in conversations. These small surrenders send a message to the world: this person's time isn't valuable. Their opinions don't matter. Their needs are secondary to everyone else's wants. Once this pattern is established, it accelerates. People learn to see the accommodating person as a resource to be used, rather than a person to be respected. They stop asking and start expecting. They stop being grateful and start being entitled. They stop seeing the person as an equal and start seeing them as a service provider whose job is to make their lives easier. The accommodating person, meanwhile, becomes increasingly resentful, but feels trapped by their own pattern of behavior. They worry that setting boundaries now will seem out of character. They fear that people will stop liking them if they stop being endlessly available. They convince themselves that they're the only ones who care enough to make sacrifices, never recognizing that their sacrifices are actually enabling others' selfishness. This is what happens when you mistake being used for being valued, when you confuse being needed for being respected, when you believe that your worth comes from what you can do for others, rather than who you are as a person. It's a trap that catches millions of good-hearted people who simply never learned that respect is something you must demand, not something you can earn through endless accommodation. The most insidious part of this dynamic is how it becomes self-reinforcing. The more you accommodate, the more accommodation people expect. The more you apologize, the more people assume you have something to apologize for. The more you seek approval, the less valuable your approval becomes to others. The more you make yourself available for disrespect, the more disrespect you receive. People who fall into this pattern often tell themselves they're just being kind, just being helpful, just being understanding. But kindness without boundaries isn't kindness. It's enabling. Helpfulness without limits isn't helpfulness. It's codependence. Understanding without self-respect isn't understanding. It's self-abandonment. What these people don't realize is that by refusing to set boundaries, they're not just harming themselves, they're harming others too. They're enabling bad behavior. They're teaching people that it's acceptable to be selfish, inconsiderate, and exploitative. They're creating a world where users thrive and genuine reciprocity becomes rare. The tragedy of Sarah's story, and millions like it, isn't just that she lost years of her life to exploitation. The tragedy is that it was all unnecessary. Every moment of disrespect she endured, every instance of being taken advantage of, every day she spent feeling invisible and undervalued, all of it could have been prevented with the simple act of establishing and maintaining boundaries from the beginning. But here's the thing that Sarah and people like her don't understand. Setting boundaries isn't mean. Saying no isn't selfish. Expecting reciprocity isn't unreasonable. Demanding respect isn't arrogant. These are basic requirements for healthy relationships and sustainable success. Without them, you become a resource to be consumed rather than a person to be valued. The world is full of Sarahs, and if you're reading this, there's a good chance you recognize something of yourself in her story. Maybe you've felt that familiar frustration of being taken for granted. Maybe you've experienced the resentment that comes from always giving more than you receive. Maybe you've wondered why you attract people who seem to see you as convenient rather than valuable. The answer isn't to become hard or cynical or closed off from others. The answer isn't to stop being generous or helpful or kind. The answer is to learn the difference between healthy giving and self-abandonment, between reasonable accommodation and exploitation, between being valued for who you are and being used for what you can provide. What if you decided to do something different? What if you chose to see your worth as non-negotiable, rather than something to be proven through endless accommodation? What if you understood that true respect comes not from what you're willing to tolerate, but from what you're not willing to accept? The fundamental principle that separates those who command respect from those who beg for it lies in understanding a simple but profound truth. Respect is not given, it is recognized. When Napoleon Hill spent years studying the most successful people of his era, He discovered that they all shared one common trait. They possessed an unshakable inner authority that preceded any external validation. They didn't wait for the world to tell them they were valuable. They knew it, and the world simply responded to that knowing. This isn't about arrogance or false confidence. It's about what Carl Jung called individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are rather than who others expect you to be. When you operate from this place of authentic self-knowledge, manipulation becomes nearly impossible because you're not seeking anything from others that you don't already possess within yourself. You're not looking for approval, validation, or permission to exist fully in your own life. Consider the metaphor of the river and the rock. A river, no matter how powerful, flows around a rock. It doesn't diminish the rock or move it from its position. The rock doesn't need to prove its solidity to the river. Its very nature is its proof. Those who command respect are like that rock, solid, unmovable in their core identity, allowing the currents of social pressure and manipulation to flow around them without being displaced. The Stoic philosophers, particularly Epictetus, understood this principle deeply. Epictetus taught that we suffer not from the events themselves, but from our judgments about those events. When someone disrespects you, the disrespect itself is not the problem. Your belief that you must accept it is the problem. When someone attempts to manipulate you, the manipulation is not what causes your suffering. Your uncertainty about your own worth is what makes you vulnerable. Viktor Frankl, who endured the ultimate test of human dignity in concentration camps, discovered that even in the most degrading circumstances, one thing remained untouchable: his ability to choose his response. He wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." This is the foundation of all personal authority, the recognition that no one can determine your worth but you, and no one can compromise your dignity without your permission. But here's where most people misunderstand the concept of respect. They think it's about being liked, about avoiding conflict, about making others comfortable. They believe that if they're just nice enough, accommodating enough, useful enough, respect will naturally follow. This is like trying to build a house by starting with the decorations instead of the foundation. Without the bedrock of self-respect, all external attempts to gain respect will crumble. James Clear, in his research on habit formation, discovered that lasting change comes not from changing what you do, but from changing who you believe you are. When you see yourself as someone who naturally commands respect, your actions automatically align with that identity. You don't have to force yourself to set boundaries. Boundaries become natural expressions of your self-concept. You don't have to remember to speak with authority. Authority flows from your certainty about your own worth. Think of yourself as a sculptor working with marble. Every interaction, every decision, every response to challenge or disrespect is a chisel strike that either reveals or conceals your true form. Most people chip away at their own dignity with each accommodation, each apology for existing, each acceptance of unacceptable behavior. But those who understand the art of respect use each interaction to reveal more clearly the person they truly are. Someone worthy of consideration, someone not to be trifled with, someone whose time and energy are valuable. Nietzsche spoke of the difference between master morality and slave morality. Slave morality seeks to be good by external standards, constantly looking to others for validation and direction. Master morality operates from internal standards, creating value rather than seeking it. When you operate from master morality in the context of respect, you don't ask others to respect you. You respect yourself so completely that others have no choice but to recognize it. This principle manifests in countless subtle ways. Watch someone who truly commands respect enter a room. They don't announce their importance. It's evident in their bearing. They don't demand attention, they naturally attract it. They don't prove their worth, they embody it. Their handshake is firm without being aggressive. Their eye contact is steady without being intrusive. Their voice is calm without being weak. Their presence fills space without taking up too much of it. The tempest is another powerful metaphor for understanding this dynamic. When a storm rages, some trees are uprooted and blown about, while others bend but do not break. The difference lies not in the strength of the wind, but in the depth of the roots. Those who are constantly blown about by others' opinions, manipulations, and disrespect are like trees with shallow roots. They have no deep connection to their own worth, no anchor in their own identity. But here's what the literature of self-mastery makes clear. Developing these roots, this unshakable sense of self, is not a passive process. It requires what Epictetus called discipline of desire and discipline of action. You must actively choose to value yourself, even when others don't. You must consciously decide to maintain your standards, even when it would be easier to lower them. You must deliberately practice self-respect until it becomes as natural as breathing. The process begins with radical honesty about your current patterns. If you consistently attract people who take advantage of you, you must ask, what am I communicating that makes me seem like a good target? If you find yourself frequently feeling disrespected, you must examine, in what ways am I disrespecting myself? If you struggle to say no to unreasonable requests, you must investigate, what do I believe will happen if I prioritize my own needs? The psychology of respect operates on a simple principle. People treat you the way you teach them to treat you. Every time you accept disrespect, you're providing a lesson. Every time you allow manipulation to succeed, you're offering a tutorial. Every time you apologize for having needs or boundaries, you're creating a blueprint for future interactions. The question is, what are you teaching? Those who master the art of commanding respect understand that it's not about being perfect or never making mistakes. It's about having such a clear relationship with your own worth that temporary setbacks don't shake your fundamental self-concept. When they make a mistake, they own it without self-flagellation. When they're criticized, they consider the feedback without assuming it defines them. When they're challenged, they respond from strength rather than defensiveness. Consider the lighthouse metaphor. A lighthouse doesn't chase ships or plead with them to notice its light. It simply stands firm and shines consistently, allowing ships to navigate by its beacon. Those who truly command respect operate like lighthouses. They maintain their inner light regardless of external weather, and others naturally orient themselves around that steady presence. The difference between manipulation and influence becomes clear through this lens. Manipulation seeks to control others by exploiting their weaknesses and insecurities. Influence operates by maintaining such clarity and consistency in yourself that others are naturally drawn to your certainty. Manipulators need you to be uncertain about your worth so they can define it for you. Those with genuine authority help others find their own strength by modeling what strength looks like. This is why the greatest teachers throughout history, whether in philosophy, psychology, or personal development, all point toward the same fundamental truth. Outer change begins with inner transformation. You cannot command respect from others while withholding it from yourself. You cannot avoid manipulation while remaining unclear about your own values. You cannot establish healthy boundaries while fundamentally believing you don't deserve them. The ancient principle, as within so without, applies perfectly to the dynamics of respect. When your inner world is characterized by self-doubt, people-pleasing, and boundary confusion, your outer world will reflect those qualities back to you through disrespectful treatment, manipulative relationships, and constant boundary violations. But when your inner world is characterized by self-respect, clear values, and firm boundaries, your outer world transforms to match. This transformation doesn't require you to become someone else. It requires you to become more fully yourself, the version of yourself that exists beneath all the conditioning, expectations, and learned helplessness. It requires what Jung called the confrontation with the shadow, acknowledging and integrating the parts of yourself you've been taught to suppress, including your right to take up space, your right to have needs, your right to expect decent treatment from others. The path forward is both simple and challenging. Simple because the principles are clear and time-tested. Challenging because implementing them requires you to go against years of conditioning and social programming. It requires you to value your own opinion of yourself more than others' opinions of you. It requires you to choose temporary discomfort over permanent diminishment. It requires you to trust that authentic self-respect will attract healthier relationships, even if it means losing relationships built on your willingness to be mistreated. But here's the profound truth that makes this journey worthwhile. When you operate from genuine self-respect, you don't just improve your own life, you improve the lives of everyone around you. You stop enabling bad behavior. You stop rewarding manipulation with compliance. You stop teaching people that disrespect is acceptable. You become a force for healthier dynamics in every relationship and situation you enter. The literature is clear, the psychology is sound, and the path is proven. The only question remaining is whether you're ready to claim the respect that is your birthright, or whether you'll continue to live as if your worth is determined by others' willingness to acknowledge it. Now comes the moment where philosophy meets practice, where understanding transforms into action. You can know every principle of respect and authority, but without daily implementation, knowledge remains powerless. The shift from being someone who hopes for respect to someone who naturally commands it happens through specific, deliberate practices that rebuild your relationship with your own worth. Master the pause. Stop responding immediately to everything. This single practice will revolutionize how others perceive and treat you. When someone makes a request, asks for a favor, or pushes for an immediate answer, train yourself to pause. Say, "Let me think about that and get back to you," or "I need to check my schedule before I commit." This pause serves multiple purposes. It prevents you from automatically saying yes when you mean no. It communicates that your time and decisions have value, and it breaks the pattern of being seen as instantly available for others' convenience. Practice this pause in everyday situations. When a colleague asks you to cover their work, pause. When a friend wants to change plans last minute, pause. When someone interrupts you mid-sentence, pause, make eye contact, and calmly finish your thought before acknowledging their interruption. The pause is your power tool. It creates space between stimulus and response, allowing you to choose your reaction rather than simply reacting from habit. Watch what happens when you implement this consistently. People will initially be surprised because they're used to your immediate accommodation. Some may even express frustration or try to pressure you for instant responses. This is exactly when you must hold your ground. Say calmly, "I prefer to give thoughtful responses rather than quick ones," or "I make better decisions when I take time to consider them." Your refusal to be rushed communicates volumes about your self-respect. Establish your energy economy. Begin thinking of your time, attention, and energy as valuable currencies that must be invested wisely. Stop giving these resources away for free to people who don't value or reciprocate them. Create a personal economy where your resources flow toward people and activities that appreciate and enhance your life, while becoming less available to those who consistently take without giving. Implement this by auditing your current commitments. Make a list of where your time and energy go each week. Notice patterns. Which relationships consistently drain you without giving back? Which activities leave you feeling depleted rather than energized? Which commitments exist only because you were afraid to say no? Begin systematically reducing your investment in energy drains while increasing your investment in energy sources. When someone who typically takes advantage of your generosity makes a request, respond with reciprocity in mind. Instead of automatically saying yes, say something like, "I'd be happy to help you with that. Since you're great at something they're skilled at, maybe we could trade favors. I'll help you with this if you can help me with specific request." This transforms the dynamic from one-sided giving to mutual exchange. Practice saying, "That doesn't work for me," without elaborate explanations. Most people over-explain their boundaries because they feel guilty for having them. This lengthy justification actually weakens your position and invites negotiation. When you state your boundaries simply and clearly, without extensive reasoning, you communicate that your decision is final and not up for debate. Command your communication space. Revolutionize how you handle interruptions, dismissals, and disrespectful communication. When someone interrupts you, stop speaking immediately, make direct eye contact, and calmly say, "I wasn't finished." Then continue exactly where you left off. Do this every single time. Most people are trained to simply give up their speaking space when interrupted, which teaches others that their thoughts aren't important enough to complete. When someone dismisses your ideas or opinions, resist the urge to argue or convince them. Instead, calmly acknowledge their perspective and restate your position. I understand you see it differently. My view is, restate your position. This validates their right to their opinion, while maintaining the validity of yours. You're not seeking their approval of your perspective. You're simply establishing that your viewpoint exists and has equal weight. Practice holding eye contact during difficult conversations. When someone is being condescending, manipulative, or disrespectful, maintain steady, calm eye contact while they speak. This communicates that you're not intimidated, not backing down, and not accepting their attempt to diminish you. Your eyes should convey quiet confidence, not aggression. You're simply refusing to be cowed. Stop apologizing for things that aren't your fault or responsibility. Notice how often you say sorry in situations where you haven't done anything wrong. Sorry, could you repeat that? Sorry, I have a question. Sorry to bother you, but... Each unnecessary apology trains others to see you as someone who defaults to taking blame and accepting fault. Replace these reflexive apologies with neutral statements. Could you repeat that? I have a question. Excuse me, I need to ask you something. Build your rejection resilience. Strengthen your ability to say no without guilt, explanation, or apology. Start small with low-stakes situations and build your no muscle gradually. When a salesperson asks if you need help and you don't, simply say no, thank you, without feeling obligated to engage further. When friends invite you to activities you don't enjoy, say, that sounds fun, but it's not for me, without elaborate explanations about why. Practice different ways of saying no that feel authentic to your communication style. That doesn't work for me. I'm not available for that. I've decided not to take on any new commitments right now. That's not something I'm interested in. I prefer not to. Notice that none of these require justification or apology. They're simply clear statements of your position. When people pressure you to change your no to yes, resist the urge to provide more explanation. Increased pressure calls for increased firmness, not increased justification. Repeat your position. As I said, that doesn't work for me. If they continue pushing, you can say, I've given you my answer. Continuing to ask isn't going to change it. Expect and prepare for guilt trips. Manipulative people often respond to boundaries with statements designed to make you feel selfish. I guess you're too busy for your friends, or I thought I could count on you, or you've changed. Recognize these as manipulation tactics, not valid criticism. Respond calmly. I care about our friendship, which is why I'm being honest about what works for me, or simply, I understand you're disappointed, but my answer remains the same. Curate. Your response portfolio. Develop a collection of calm, confident responses to common disrespectful behaviors. Having these responses ready prevents you from being caught off guard and reacting defensively. Practice these phrases until they become natural. For boundary violations, that crosses a line for me. I'm not comfortable with that. That's not something I'm willing to do. For manipulation attempts, I don't respond well to pressure. Let me think about what's best for me here. I prefer to make decisions without feeling rushed. For disrespectful communication, I expect to be spoken to respectfully. That tone doesn't work for me. Let's reset this conversation with mutual respect. For blame shifting, that's not my responsibility. I'm accountable for my actions, not yours. Let's each own our part in this. Practice these responses in low-risk situations first. Use them with telemarketers, pushy salespeople, or in situations where the relationship isn't critical. This builds your confidence and naturalness with boundary-setting language before you need to use it in more important relationships. Monitor and adjust your energy signals. Become aware of the subtle signals you send about your availability for disrespect. Notice your body language. Are you making yourself smaller in conversations? Do you lean away when speaking up for yourself? Do you fidget or display nervous energy when setting boundaries? Practice standing or sitting tall, maintaining open body language and speaking from your full voice rather than a diminished version. Pay attention to your vocal patterns. Do you uptalk, ending statements as if they're questions? Do you speak too quickly when nervous? Do you lower your volume when discussing important topics? Practice speaking at a measured pace, ending statements with downward inflection to convey certainty, and maintaining appropriate volume even when discussing difficult subjects. Notice your response timing. Do you text back immediately every time? Do you answer calls during your personal time? Do you respond to emails outside work hours? Begin introducing natural delays that communicate your time has value and you're not always instantly available. This isn't about playing games. It's about establishing healthy boundaries around your accessibility. Track the results of these practices. Notice who respects your boundaries and who pushes against them. Pay attention to which relationships improve when you show more self-respect and which ones become strained. The people who react negatively to your healthy boundaries were likely benefiting from your lack of them. This information is valuable in understanding the true nature of your relationships. The transformation doesn't happen overnight, but it happens consistently. Each time you pause instead of automatically accommodating, each time you maintain your position despite pressure, each time you calmly assert your worth, you're rewiring both your own neural pathways and others' expectations of you. You're training yourself to value your own time and training others to value it too. Remember, you're not becoming difficult or demanding. You're becoming clear about your worth and consistent in honoring it. There's a profound difference between the two, and that difference is what separates those who command respect from those who beg for it. These practices compound over time. The pause becomes natural. The energy boundaries become automatic. The communication confidence becomes your default state. The rejection resilience becomes unshakable. What once required conscious effort becomes unconscious competence, and what once felt scary becomes empowering. Start today. Choose one practice and implement it consistently for the next week. Notice the resistance, both your own and others, and push through it. Your future self, living with the respect and dignity you deserve, is counting on the decisions you make today. There exists within you a place that no external force can touch, no manipulation can penetrate, no disrespect can diminish. This place is not built through years of practice, though practice makes it more accessible. It is not earned through achievement, though achievement may help you recognize it. It simply is, has always been, waiting for you to remember its existence and take up residence there. The archer's mastery picture. The master archer, standing in perfect stillness before the target. The wind may blow, voices may shout, distractions may swirl around them, but their focus remains unwavering. Their power comes not from force or aggression, but from an absolute certainty about their aim and complete trust in their ability to hit the mark. They do not argue with the wind or become frustrated by the noise. These are simply conditions they account for while maintaining their inner stability. You are this archer, and respect is your target. But here's what most people misunderstand. The target is not other people's opinions of you, their approval, or their validation. The target is your own unshakable sense of worth. When you aim for others' respect without first establishing your own, you're shooting in the dark. When you seek external validation to feel valuable, you're trying to hit a moving target in a storm. The master archer understands that consistency comes from within. They have practiced their form until it becomes second nature. They have developed such confidence in their ability that external conditions cannot shake their fundamental stance. Similarly, when you develop unshakable self-respect, external attempts at manipulation and disrespect become mere weather conditions, temporary disturbances that cannot alter your essential position. Watch how the archer prepares for each shot. There is no rushing, no desperation, no pleading with the arrow to find its mark. There is only calm preparation, steady aim, and confident release. This is how you must approach every interaction where your respect is at stake. No desperation for approval, no rushing to prove your worth, no pleading to be treated well. Only calm certainty about your value, steady maintenance of your boundaries, and confident expression of your authentic self. The arrow knows where it's going because the archer knows where they're aiming. When you know your worth, your actions naturally align with that knowledge. You don't have to think about how to respond to disrespect. Your response flows naturally from your self-concept. You don't have to plan how to set boundaries. Boundaries become as natural as breathing when you truly value yourself. But the archer's greatest wisdom lies in understanding that some shots will miss the mark, and this doesn't diminish their skill or worth. Sometimes you will encounter people who refuse to recognize your value, situations where respect seems impossible to achieve, interactions that leave you feeling frustrated despite your best efforts. The archer doesn't abandon their practice because of occasional misses. They learn from each shot and return to their fundamental stance. The river's wisdom. Consider the river that has carved the Grand Canyon. It didn't accomplish this feat through force or violence, but through consistent, patient presence. Day after day, year after year, century after century, the river maintained its course. It didn't try to convince the rock to move. It simply continued being itself, and eventually the landscape transformed around it. This is the power of authentic self-respect. It doesn't demand immediate recognition or fight for instant results. It simply maintains its course with patient consistency, allowing others to adjust to its presence over time. Like the river, your respect doesn't need to announce itself loudly or prove itself dramatically. It just needs to be consistently present, flowing from the deep wellspring of your self-knowledge. The river never doubts its right to flow. It doesn't apologize for taking up space or ask permission to follow its natural course. It doesn't try to flow uphill to please others or change direction every time it encounters resistance. It has an inner compass that guides it toward its destination, and it trusts that compass completely. When you operate from this same principle, you stop seeking external validation for your choices and start trusting your inner guidance about what serves your highest good. Notice how the river responds to obstacles. It doesn't stop flowing when it encounters rocks. It finds a way around them or over time wears them smooth. It doesn't become bitter when faced with resistance. It remains flexible while maintaining its essential nature. Sometimes it moves quickly, sometimes slowly, but it never stops being water, never abandons its essential purpose of reaching the sea. Your journey toward commanding respect follows this same pattern. Sometimes you'll encounter people who resist your boundaries, situations that challenge your self-worth, or circumstances that test your resolve. Like the river, you don't stop flowing. You don't abandon your standards or compromise your values. You remain flexible in your methods while staying true to your essential nature, someone worthy of respect and considerate treatment. The river's power lies not in its speed or volume, but in its persistence and consistency. A single drop of water has little impact, but countless drops flowing together can reshape mountains. Your daily choices to honor yourself, set boundaries, and maintain standards may seem small in isolation, but their cumulative effect is transformative. Each time you choose self-respect over approval-seeking, you're adding another drop to the river that will eventually reshape the landscape of your relationships. The river also teaches us about flow and timing. Sometimes it moves around obstacles. Sometimes it waits for conditions to change, but it never abandons its path entirely. When you encounter people who seem immune to respect, situations that feel impossible to navigate, or moments when setting boundaries seems futile, remember the river's patience. Not every situation requires immediate resolution. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is maintain your course and trust that time and consistency will create the changes you seek. The mountain's presence. High above the daily storms of human drama stands the mountain, ancient, unmoved, secure in its own foundation. The mountain doesn't try to impress anyone with its height, doesn't apologize for taking up space, doesn't shrink itself to make others more comfortable. It simply exists in its full majesty, offering itself as a reference point for all who seek stability and perspective. This is the energy you cultivate when you truly understand your worth. Like the mountain, you become a reference point of stability in relationships and interactions. People sense your groundedness and naturally orient themselves differently around you, not because you demand it, but because your presence itself invites respect. The mountain weather many storms without being diminished by them. Winds howl around its peaks, rain beats against its slopes, snow covers its face, but the mountain remains essentially unchanged. These weather patterns come and go, but the mountain's core identity never wavers. Similarly, when you establish your inner foundation, external turbulence becomes temporary weather rather than existential threat. People may try to shake your confidence with criticism, manipulate you with guilt trips, or test your boundaries with persistent pressure. But like the mountain, you remain centered in your own truth. You acknowledge the storm without being swept away by it. You feel the pressure without crumbling under it. You maintain your essential shape while allowing the temporary disturbances to pass. The mountain's power is not aggressive or demanding, it's simply undeniable. It doesn't chase attention or force recognition. Its presence speaks for itself. When you embody this same quality, you stop trying to convince people of your worth and start simply inhabiting it. You stop explaining why you deserve respect and start naturally commanding it through your presence. Notice how the mountain interacts with its environment. It provides shelter for some, challenges for others, inspiration for many. It doesn't try to be everything to everyone. It offers what it has to offer and allows others to take what serves them. This is the freedom that comes with authentic self-respect. You stop trying to manage others' perceptions and start simply being yourself fully. The mountain also understands seasons. Sometimes it's covered in snow, sometimes green with life, sometimes stark and bare. But through all seasons, it remains fundamentally itself. Your journey toward respect will have seasons too, times when boundaries feel easy to maintain and times when they require more effort, periods when others recognize your worth readily and periods when respect seems harder to find. Through all seasons, like the mountain, you remain grounded in your essential worth. From the mountain's perspective, the daily dramas of disrespect and manipulation appear small and temporary. This elevated view doesn't make you disconnected or uncaring. It gives you the perspective to respond wisely rather than react emotionally. You see the larger patterns rather than getting lost in individual incidents. You understand that your worth isn't determined by any single interaction or relationship. The mountain teaches us about presence without pressure, strength without aggression, groundedness without rigidity. It shows us how to be fully ourselves without apology, how to take up space without crowding others, how to remain unmoved by others' storms while still being accessible to those who approach with respect. These three images, the archer, the river, and the mountain, represent different aspects of the same fundamental truth. Respect flows naturally from a deep connection to your own worth. The archer's focused clarity, the river's persistent flow, the mountain's grounded presence, all emerge from the same source, an unshakable knowing of your intrinsic value. When you embody these qualities, you stop seeking respect and start radiating it. You stop defending your worth and start living it. You stop trying to convince others to value you and start naturally attracting those who do. This isn't about becoming perfect or eliminating all challenges. It's about developing such a strong relationship with your own value that external validation becomes nice to receive, but not necessary to possess. The archer, river, and mountain don't apologize for their nature or try to be something else. They simply exist in their full power, offering their gifts to the world while remaining true to their essential character. This is your invitation to step fully into your own nature, claim your space in the world, and allow your inherent worth to shine through every interaction, every boundary, every choice to honor yourself. In the space between stimulus and response lies your power. In the silence between words lies your authority. In the pause between action and reaction lies your freedom. The ultimate mastery of respect comes not from what you say or do, but from your ability to choose when to speak, when to act, and when to simply be present in your own power. Most people fear silence. They rush to fill empty spaces in conversation, hurry to respond to every challenge, feel compelled to defend themselves against every criticism. This urgency reveals their inner desperation. They need constant external validation to feel secure in their worth. But those who truly command respect understand that silence is not empty space to be filled. It is potent space to be inhabited. Learn to love the pause. When someone makes an unreasonable request, pause. Let the silence hang in the air while you consider your response. When faced with manipulation, pause. Allow the weight of their words to settle. revealing their true nature. When criticized unfairly, pause. Give yourself time to separate your emotional reaction from your thoughtful response. This pause is not hesitation, it is sovereignty. You are claiming your right to think before responding, to choose rather than react. The strategic use of silence communicates more than 1,000 words of explanation. When someone attempts to justify their disrespectful behavior, your silence speaks volumes. You're not arguing with their reasoning or validating their explanation with engagement. Your silence says, "I hear you, and I am unmoved." When faced with manipulation, your pause communicates, "I am not easily swayed." When pressured for immediate compliance, your silence declares, "My decisions are not made under pressure." Practice sitting comfortably in awkward silences. When someone makes a comment designed to get a reaction from you, resist the urge to respond immediately. Let the comment sit in the space between you, revealing its true nature. Often, the person will feel compelled to fill the silence themselves, usually revealing more about their motivations than they intended. Your comfort with silence forces others to sit with the weight of their own words. The art of detachment. True mastery comes when you release your attachment to others' responses to your boundaries. You set limits not to control others, but to honor yourself. You speak your truth not to change minds, but to maintain your integrity. You maintain your standards not to impress anyone, but to live in alignment with your values. This detachment from outcomes is perhaps the most powerful aspect of commanding respect. When you need others to validate your boundaries, you're still giving them power over your sense of worth. When you require agreement with your decisions, you're still seeking external permission to exist as you are. When you get upset because someone doesn't respect your limits, you're still making their behavior about your value rather than about their character. Detachment doesn't mean not caring about outcomes. It means caring more about your integrity than about others' reactions to it. It means being willing to lose relationships that require you to diminish yourself. It means being prepared for some people to dislike your newfound self-respect. It means accepting that not everyone will appreciate your boundaries, and understanding that their lack of appreciation doesn't invalidate your right to have them. This detachment creates an almost magnetic quality in your presence. When people sense that you don't need their approval, they often become more inclined to give it. When they realize you're not trying to control their response, they're more likely to respond positively. When they understand that you're comfortable with their disagreement, they often find themselves agreeing more readily. This isn't a manipulation tactic. It's a natural result of operating from authentic self-possession rather than desperate need. Practice releasing your grip on how others should respond to your authenticity. Set your boundary and remain unattached to whether they like it. Share your truth and remain unattached to whether they accept it. Honor your values and remain unattached to whether they approve. This detachment is not indifference, it's freedom. Freedom from the exhausting work of managing others' perceptions and emotions. The daily discipline of self-mastery. Respect is not a destination you reach, it's a daily practice you embody. Like any skill worth mastering, it requires consistent cultivation, regular attention, and ongoing refinement. The difference between those who occasionally command respect and those who naturally embody it lies in their daily disciplines. Begin each day with a practice of gratitude, but not gratitude as commonly understood. Practice gratitude for your own strength, your own worth, your own capacity to choose your responses. Thank yourself for the boundaries you maintained yesterday, the times you chose self-respect over approval-seeking, the moments you paused instead of reacting. This form of gratitude builds your relationship with your own power, rather than making you dependent on external circumstances for appreciation. Develop a daily meditation practice, but focus it specifically on self-awareness and inner authority. Spend time in silence, not trying to empty your mind, but filling it with awareness of your own worth. Notice the thoughts that arise about your value, your rights, your deserving. Observe the internal voices that tell you to shrink, accommodate, or seek permission. In the silence of meditation, practice replacing these diminishing thoughts with affirming ones. Use your meditation time to visualize yourself responding powerfully to challenging situations. See yourself maintaining calm dignity when faced with disrespect. Imagine yourself setting boundaries with quiet confidence. Visualize yourself walking away from situations that don't serve you. This mental rehearsal builds neural pathways that make respectful responses more automatic in real situations. Implement daily practices of self-control that have nothing to do with respect, but everything to do with building your capacity for choosing your responses. When you want to check your phone, pause for 30 seconds first. When you want to eat something unhealthy, pause and choose consciously. When you want to speak impulsively, pause and consider your words. These small acts of self-discipline build the muscle you'll need for the larger discipline of self-respect. Keep a daily log of your respect practices. Note the times you paused instead of reacting. Record the moments you maintained boundaries despite pressure. Document the instances when you chose your own approval over others. This log serves as evidence of your growing mastery and motivation for continued practice. It also helps you identify patterns, which situations trigger your old responses, which people challenge your boundaries most, which times of day your self-respect feels strongest or weakest. End each day with honest self-reflection, not self-criticism. Ask yourself, where did I honor myself today? Where did I give away my power? What can I learn from the interactions that triggered me? How can I respond differently tomorrow? This reflection builds your self-awareness and helps you refine your approach continuously. The integration of mastery. As these practices compound over time, something remarkable happens. The boundary between self-respect and respect from others begins to dissolve. You no longer think about commanding respect. You simply embody it. You no longer strategize about avoiding manipulation. You naturally become immune to it. You no longer work to maintain your worth. You simply inhabit it. This integration manifests in countless subtle ways. Your voice carries natural authority without being authoritarian. Your presence commands attention without demanding it. Your boundaries are clear without being aggressive. Your confidence is evident without being arrogant. You become someone others naturally treat with consideration, because consideration is what your presence evokes. The people who once took advantage of you either learn to interact with you respectfully or naturally fade from your life. The situations that once triggered your people-pleasing responses become opportunities to practice your self-possession. The manipulative tactics that once worked on you become transparent and ineffective. You haven't become harder or meaner. You've become clearer and stronger. This transformation ripples outward in ways you might not expect. Other people begin to seek your advice about their own boundary issues. Friends start modeling your self-respect in their own relationships. Family members adjust their behavior because your new standards become contagious. You become a catalyst for healthier dynamics simply by refusing to participate in unhealthy ones. Remember the core principles that have guided this transformation. Respect is not earned through performance. It's claimed through self-possession. Boundaries are not walls to keep others out. They're containers to keep your integrity in. Confidence is not the absence of doubt. It's the decision to act in alignment with your worth despite doubt. Authority is not power over others. It's sovereignty over yourself. Remember that manipulation only works on those who doubt their own perceptions and worth. When you trust yourself completely, external attempts to confuse or control you become obviously transparent. Remember that respect is not about being liked by everyone. It's about being honored by those who matter and ignored by those who don't. Remember the archer's focused clarity, always knowing the target of your own worth. Remember the river's persistent flow, maintaining your course regardless of obstacles. Remember the mountain's grounded presence, unmoved by the storms of others' emotions and manipulations. Your daily choice is simple but profound. Will you honor the person you truly are, or will you diminish yourself to manage others' comfort? Will you speak from your truth, or will you say what others want to hear? Will you maintain your standards, or will you lower them to avoid conflict? Will you claim your space in the world, or will you shrink to make room for others' egos? These choices, made consistently over time, determine not just how others treat you, but how you experience your own. Life. When you choose self-respect repeatedly, you create a life of dignity, authentic relationships, and genuine satisfaction. When you choose accommodation repeatedly, you create a life of resentment, surface connections, and chronic dissatisfaction. The path is clear, the practices are proven, and the power is yours. You have everything you need to transform from someone who hopes for respect into someone who naturally commands it. You have the tools to shift from being easily manipulated to being confidently autonomous. You have the capacity to move from seeking external validation to providing your own internal authorization. The question is not whether you can make this transformation. You absolutely can. The question is whether you will choose to begin today, this moment, with the next decision you make about how to honor yourself. Will you pause instead of reacting? Will you speak your truth instead of saying what others want to hear? Will you maintain your boundary instead of accommodating unreasonable demands? Start now. Choose respect for yourself now. Claim your authority now. Step into your power now. When you master the art of respecting yourself so completely that disrespect becomes impossible to ignore and manipulation becomes easy to spot, nothing and no one will be able to diminish you. The journey begins with a single pause, a single boundary, a single moment of choosing your own worth over others' approval. From that moment forward, every choice either reinforces your mastery or undermines it. Choose mastery. Choose yourself. Choose the respect you were born to command.